He's one of the world's most wanted drug traffickers in a major operation supported by the United States and the United Kingdom.
Step into the shadows of the underworld.
Sorry, a village pub, people hear shots saying that they haven't seen.
And discover the rise and fall of an empire that once ruled with fear. What led to its explosive downfall? Don't miss this gripping story. You'll want to know how it all ended before the secrets disappear forever. Origins of the Syndicate. In the early 1990s, a small group of individuals with checkered pasts came together in a dimly lit bar in Brooklyn, New York. At the helm was Antonio "Tony" Ricci, a former street racer turned businessman. He was joined by Carlos "The Brain" Ortega, an ex-lawyer with connections to powerful families, and Maria Vasquez, a skilled con artist. Together, they formed what would soon become one of the most feared crime syndicates in the city. Their first operation was modest, a series of high-stakes poker games where they used clever scams to build their capital. But it didn't take long for the trio to realize they could expand. By 1993, they had their first major breakthrough, a successful drug trafficking deal. This venture catapulted them into the world of organized crime, allowing them to control territories and gain influence over local businesses. It was the beginning of a criminal empire that would grow rapidly, gaining power and wealth as the years went by. Expansion and consolidation. By 1995, the syndicate's influence had spread far beyond Brooklyn. Under Tony's leadership, they expanded into new cities, taking control of underground gambling rings, smuggling operations, and even arms trafficking. Carlos Ortega used his legal expertise to shield the syndicate from law enforcement, while Maria Vasquez masterminded the recruitment of loyal operatives who helped them tighten their grip on key industries. In 1997, the syndicate made its biggest move, entering the legitimate business world. They invested in bars, nightclubs, and real estate, all while maintaining control over their illegal activities. The more they expanded, the more powerful they became. By 1999, they had formed strategic alliances with other criminal groups across the country, securing a network that spanned from New York to Los Angeles. This period marked the syndicate's peak as they grew stronger and more untouchable, with influence reaching into the highest echelons of society. The Golden Era. The period from 2000 to 2005 was the syndicate's golden era. With an empire sprawling across the nation, they enjoyed unparalleled profits and influence. Tony Ricci had become a household name in both criminal circles and legitimate businesses. The syndicate's control over local markets, such as drugs, gambling, and even construction, was absolute. They expanded into tech startups, laundering money through seemingly innocent ventures. By 2003, their wealth was estimated to be in the billions. Their grip on the city of New York was particularly strong, where they were the undisputed leaders of the underworld. They began to invest in charitable causes, gaining a facade of respectability, and even having some members appear at high-profile public events. On the surface, everything looked prosperous, and the syndicate seemed untouchable, with no sign of slowing down. But this era of success would be short-lived as tensions and risks began to grow beneath the surface. Law Enforcement Crackdown. In 2006, the unthinkable happened. The syndicate's impenetrable shield began to crack. For years, law enforcement had struggled to infiltrate the organization, but things took a drastic turn when an undercover agent, Detective Emily Harper, infiltrated their ranks. Through her deep cover, she gathered critical intelligence about the syndicate's operations, leading to a coordinated investigation by federal and local authorities. By 2007, the first major raid occurred, targeting one of the syndicate's key drug warehouses. Although they had expected it, the sheer scale of the operation shocked even the most seasoned criminals. Tony Ricci and his top lieutenants went into hiding, but the syndicate's operations were disrupted, losing millions in revenue. The media exploded with coverage, and the public's perception of the once feared group began to shift. Law enforcement was closing in, and the once indomitable syndicate was now on the defensive. internal conflicts. By 2008, cracks began to show within the syndicate itself. The pressure of being pursued by law enforcement and rival gangs led to growing tensions among its members. Carlos Ortega, once the mastermind behind the syndicate's legal strategies, began questioning Tony Ritchie's decisions, especially after the botched raid in 2007. He believed Tony's reckless leadership was putting them all in jeopardy. Meanwhile, Maria Vasquez, who had once been fiercely loyal, saw her influence within the organization erode as new, younger members gained power. Some of them questioned her methods, and rumors of betrayal spread like wildfire. In 2009, a bloody power struggle erupted, leading to the assassination of several key members. The syndicate was no longer united under a single vision. The infighting threatened to undo everything they had built, and the cracks widened as the group's once solid foundation began to crumble. Economic downturn. By 2010, the syndicate was facing a severe economic downturn. The global financial crisis had left a significant mark on their operations. Once thriving illegal businesses such as smuggling and drug trafficking saw a drastic reduction in profits due to a combination of law enforcement crackdowns and a struggling global market. Their legitimate investments, like real estate, were also affected, with properties losing value as the economy tanked. The syndicate had been accustomed to an influx of cash, but now every deal felt like a gamble. Tony Ritchie, once known for his calculated risk-taking, found himself struggling to keep the operation afloat. Carlos Ortega had grown more reclusive, and Maria Vasquez started making risky decisions to stay competitive. As the money dried up, members began questioning whether the syndicate could survive. In 2011, the first major territory loss occurred, signaling a tipping point. Suddenly, the mighty syndicate wasn't as invincible as it once seemed. Technological challenges. By 2012, the syndicate's once dominant operations were increasingly hindered by advancements in technology. Law enforcement had begun utilizing cutting-edge tools like digital surveillance, facial recognition software, and encrypted communication monitoring. The syndicate, which had relied on traditional, face-to-face dealings, struggled to adapt to the digital age. Maria Vasquez tried to counter this by creating a network of encrypted online platforms for the syndicate's operations, but it wasn't enough. Their reliance on cash-based transactions also made them vulnerable as financial institutions implemented stricter anti-money laundering protocols. In 2013, a hacker working for a rival gang managed to breach their encrypted systems, exposing confidential operations and contacts. The breach led to several arrests and forced the syndicate to rethink its entire structure. The syndicate's inability to effectively adapt to technology marked the beginning of its downfall, as their old ways no longer provided the security they once enjoyed. Public perception and media influence. By 2014, the syndicate's operations were no longer a secret, and the media was playing a critical role in shaping public perception. The once hidden Underworld organization had now become a highly publicized entity, as journalists, filmmakers, and writers eagerly dug into its sordid history. Stories of the syndicate's rise, lavish lifestyles, and ruthless control over the streets were plastered across newspapers and TV screens. With each passing day, their legacy was becoming as well known as the Mafias, but in a much more sensationalized way. The media didn't just focus on the crimes, they romanticized the syndicate's power and influence, treating members like folk heroes in some stories. The press highlighted their wealth, the luxurious cars, the high-profile gatherings, and their ability to outsmart law enforcement time and time again. As a result, public curiosity about the syndicate grew, and they became infamous symbols of rebellion and defiance. Documentaries about their criminal empire were released, one of the most notable being Empire of Shadows in 2016, which attracted millions of viewers worldwide. However, the coverage came with unintended consequences. While some admired them, many others began to fear the syndicate's unchecked power. Tony Ritchie tried to maintain control of the narrative, hiring PR experts to spin positive stories about their community involvement. But with every new piece of media, the public started to see them less as untouchable figures and more as corrupt, dangerous criminals. In 2017, a scandal broke that shattered their carefully constructed image. Investigative journalists uncovered connections between the syndicate and several high-ranking officials in the government, as well as charity organizations. The story, dubbed the Silver Veil Scandal, showed how the syndicate had been laundering money through fake charity donations and political bribes. The public, once fascinated, now felt betrayed and angry. The media frenzy that followed made it impossible for the syndicate to maintain its grip on power. Public support crumbled, and law enforcement, now with the backing of the community, accelerated their efforts to dismantle the organization. The syndicate, once a symbol of unyielding power, was now a shadow of its former self, unable to escape the media spotlight that had exposed its darkest secrets. Legal battles and convictions. In 2016, the walls of the syndicate finally closed in. After years of relentless investigation, law enforcement and prosecutors had gathered enough evidence to launch a series of high-profile trials against the syndicate's leadership. Tony Ricci, Carlos Ortega, and Maria Vasquez were all indicted on charges ranging from money laundering to organized crime and murder. The trials, which began in 2017, captured the attention of the public. The courtroom became a battleground, with high-powered lawyers defending the accused and prosecutors fiercely pushing for convictions. The evidence against them was overwhelming. A combination of undercover agents, wiretaps, and surveillance footage painted a clear picture of the syndicate's activities. By 2018, Tony Ricci was found guilty of racketeering, murder, and conspiracy, receiving a 25-year sentence. Carlos Ortega was convicted of money laundering and obstruction of justice, sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Maria Vasquez faced charges related to fraud and organized crime and was sentenced to 12 years. Despite their criminal success, the syndicate's downfall came not from external forces, but from their own actions. The long legal battles shattered their empire, leaving it in ruins. Members who had once been loyal scattered, and the fearsome organization that had once controlled vast territories was now nothing more than a shadow of its former self. As the years passed, many of the syndicate's leaders were either incarcerated or on the run. The law had finally caught up with them, bringing justice to the streets they once ruled. Decline and legacy. By 2019, the syndicate that had once ruled the streets was no more. With key members behind bars and the rest scattered or in hiding, their criminal empire crumbled. Tony Ricci was sentenced to life in prison, his name becoming synonymous with organized crime in New York. Maria Vasquez's empire of cons and scams was dismantled, and Carlos Ortega, having turned state's witness, disappeared into witness protection. Yet, even as the syndicate fell apart, its legacy endured. The stories of their rise and fall were etched into the fabric of the city, influencing countless movies, documentaries, and even street legends. While their reign ended in violence and betrayal, their impact on the world of organized crime remained, a warning to future generations of criminals. The rise and fall of the syndicate became a stark reminder of how power can corrupt, and how, in the end, even the most feared criminals are not immune to the law. The syndicate's fall isn't the end. There's more to the story. Want to know how the perfect heist left authorities scratching their heads? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next jaw-dropping video. Stay tuned and be the first to uncover the truth.